So again, here's some other tools that you can use for kind of doing statistical analysis or network traffic analysis. Wireshark is the big one, which if those of you are probably most familiar with. It is probably one of the best, right? So it's hard to kind of say anything bad about it really, because it is a really good tool and it's free. There are some command line tools like T-Shark and things like that, which will do kind of parsing outside of the GUI. So on like larger data captures, you can use things like T-Shark and then its related files, most of which are kind of losing. I'm losing right now, but they will allow you to basically automate some of the processing if you wanted to filter down traffic or something along those lines. It has the ability to do statistical analysis through I/O graphs and things like that. There's also a bunch of other ones out there. Network Miner, NetWitness both do kind of traffic reconstruction and stuff like that, and they do a pretty good job of that. Snort is more of a kind of a monitoring tool, but certainly has capabilities to do analysis of it. And then CERT developed the Silk tools, which is designed to do analysis of flow data primarily, but it will basically kind of automate some statistics and information out of that data. And there's also many more, and all have their strengths. All probably have their weaknesses too. So, this is kind of, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's kind of just a quick, screenshot of Wireshark, right? You're basically going to have your traffic, your packets that are actually going up over here. You're going to have the actual content, or the kind of the sections of those packets that are represented here, and then the actual data represented at the bottom, right? So it's kind of as a more granular view as you go down, right? You also have the ability to run filters, so you can actually filter traffic based on certain protocols, ports, IP addresses, or whatever else, which allows you to kind of perform some sort of kind of analysis and kind of restrict data down to kind of better understand what was actually taking place. So this is kind of a little bit, repetitive, but statistics will basically give you a summary of the network activity. You can do summaries based on a variety of different things, right? The protocols that were used, the ports that were used, IP addresses involved, the data, quantity of data being sent, and so on and so forth. And again, I want to point out, that sometimes, this is general information, right? It's going to basically be like, this is the amount of data that's going to that IP address. But sometimes that general information is like the key to your investigation, right? Knowing that, we had, 2 gigabytes of data stolen from our web server, and 2 gigabytes of data exactly went to this IP address is usually like a pretty good indicator that like that was involved in this compromise, right? At the same time, and so on and so forth. So here's kind of here's showing the Wireshark I/O graphs, right? And you can see here. Does anyone see the first filter up here is maybe a little hard to see, but it's UDP port 1194. Anyone have any idea what that is? If you haven't used the service before, it would be difficult to know. No worries. UDP port 1194 is OpenVPN. Anyone familiar with OpenVPN? It's basically a free VPN client server. And 1194 is its default port, right? It doesn't have to be on that port, but it's its default. And then the other connection there you see is HTTP, which I hope you're all familiar with, right? You've probably used it before. But as you can see here, so the HTTP is in red, and the FTP or the UDP is in black there. And the real thing that I want to show is that if you can kind of see, is you kind of see those peaks that exist there, right? That's the actual traffic. This is a very small segment, right, of traffic, right? So you only see those peaks. But you see how they kind of mirror each other, right? That the black is basically a little bit above the red in every one of those peaks. This is indicative, and this is why you can it gives you a good understanding of what's going on in the system, even though you may not know it. But like, if you were to figure out, and you were to Google, and you were to find out that UDP port 1194 is OpenVPN, and then you say, well, I have HTTP, which I know is web traffic, right? And you have these kind of peaks going with them, right? Kind of in these peaks and valleys together, is typically a representation of kind of the VPN encapsulating that HTTP traffic, right? So the fact that you're seeing kind of a direct flow between them pretty much means that you have this HTTP traffic going over your OpenVPN connection, right? So it's basically that they're passing that web traffic through that VPN, right? And so that may be very helpful for you to understand kind of like, why can't I read this traffic, right? Well, probably because it's encrypted, right? So it's kind of those type of things which can give you a better understanding of what's going on in the system. So, kind of talking about, Wireshark again. Wireshark is kind of the thing that we'll focus on the most, I guess, for traffic tools. Filtering is really, really helpful. It allows you to kind of break down what the different to kind of filter it onto different protocols that you're interested in. It allows you to kind of make it more manageable to kind of understand what traffic was being used for and things like that. And you can kind of just turn filters on and off to kind of get a better understanding. Because the thing is that you're going to get a lot of data. Network traffic is it's amazing how many packets actually go through. You don't really think about it, but it's amazing how many actually go through when you're looking at live data that's actually occurring and people's active network connections. So having filters is really helpful to make it more manageable so you can actually look through the data. And basically anything can be filtered based on what you want and stuff like that. One thing I want to point out is when you're dealing with larger data sets, large amounts of data, you want to use something like T-Shark or one of the other tools that was out there, Silk tools and so on and so forth, because Wireshark, it's a GUI, right? So it needs to basically load all that data into memory, and that's a lot to load if you're dealing with gigabytes of data. So to keep that in mind. The other thing, one thing that's really great about Wireshark is that it will automatically do stream reconstruction, and this can be really helpful for if you're looking for files and stuff like that. We had a case a while back when I was at CERT where we had to, and we ended up doing this in Python and automating a lot of it, but we had to, they were basically exfiltrating a lot of RAR files. Everyone familiar with RARs? RARs are basically basically a zip file. They're a different variation. It's an archive. It's a compressed archive. And they were basically siphoning things off in these RAR files. And looking through the network traffic, they were large, right? Large by packet capture standards, right? Some in the, tens of megabytes or something like that, right? So it's going to be over multiple packets over the course of time, right? So using Wireshark to be able to do stream reconstruction and put those files back together, their communications, is exceptionally helpful, right? Because now you have the file, right? You have the header information associated with it, but you also have the actual content. And Wireshark basically automates doing all this, which makes it really easy, right? Like I said, we eventually ended up doing it through Python and some other libraries because of the quantity of data we were dealing with. But it is nice when you're just trying to look through and trying to understand what happened in a communication. Yeah, and it just kind of understand how stream reconstruction works. It's using the sequence and acknowledgement numbers that are associated with packets to kind of put the chain back together, right? And one thing that's nice about how Wireshark does it is it will be able to handle kind of resets and resent packets and things like that. It'll include those in the processing, but it won't include them in the actual data that you're trying to parse through, which makes it nice when you're trying to actually put files back together.